Alright, the next thing that we're going to be doing here, like I said before, was operating the fire pump. And obviously once the vehicle is running, you got your master switch and your ignition switch on. We've already started the vehicle. My parking brake is set, meaning it's pulled up, so it's holding the vehicle stationary. We always make sure that we're in neutral. If you're in neutral, it's safe to shift the pump. You never want to touch this knob unless you're in neutral, both when you're shifting the fire pump into gear and when you're shifting the fire pump out of gear back to road gear. You always want to make sure that you're in neutral before you touch this knob. There is a safety release here on this knob that you need to release by pushing up on the lever. That'll release the switch or the safety catch. Then you pull straight out on the knob. And at that point you should get the pump engaged light. If you don't worry too much. It just means that the teeth have probably bumped head to head or tooth to tooth, and just putting the vehicle into drive for just a split second will be all it takes to make those teeth mesh. And then shortly after putting it in drive, we'll get our okay to pump light as well. Okay, so next here we're going to go ahead and put the vehicle in drive. And it'll say 4-4 on the display. Once it says 4-4 on the display, your okay to pump light will be illuminated, and then it's time to go back to the pump panel. Once we're back here at this beautiful climate controlled pump panel area, the first thing you want to make sure that you have is water. Make sure that you've established your water source. We'll open our tank to pump. So now all of the water that we have, a 1,000-gallon water tank, is being supplied to the pump through this tank to pump valve. Even though the tank to pump will automatically pressurize the system, I always like to pull the primer for a few seconds just to help pull any air bubbles that might be in the upper regions of the pump out of the pump. It'll help the governor run much more smoothly if you get into a habit of just pulling that primer for a couple of seconds when you first start up on scene. I also recommend that you just crack your tank refill just slightly. That might even be a little too much. You just need to crack it slightly so that you provide a little bit of circulation from the tank back to the tank through this small, like a 2.5 or 2-inch refill valve. That keeps the water flowing so that there's no hot water being bottled up inside the pump if the pump were to sit here and not discharge any water for a great amount of time. Now, to make compressed air foam, the next thing that we're going to want to make sure that we do while we're still here at idle on the engine, while we're at idle, we're going to want to turn on the air compressor by pushing this on-off button. This can be made auto on so that as soon as you put the pump in gear, this CAFS compressor automatically kicks into gear. We can enter a code in here in the programming mode and force this compressor to automatically engage every time, so that you get in the habit of using this excellent technology. But for right now, we'll just show you how to turn it on. You have to push and hold this on-off button for over a second to turn on the compressor. Once you push that button and get that green light, the compressor will kick on and it will start building pressure right away. Now, in order to build more pressure, we obviously need to bring the engine speed up. So we can bring up our engine governor pressure. What we're calling for will show up here in the display. What's actual is up here in the pump discharge display. So we're going to want to run at around 100 psi. So we'll ask for 100 psi, and then now what we're getting is 100 psi. And you will notice that the water pump pressure and the air compressor pressure are going to automatically try to balance with one another. There's an automatic balancing system for the compressor that's going to try to mirror whatever kind of pressure that the pump is making. If I go up to 110, the air compressor is going to climb up to 110. If I go back down to 100, or back, let's say we go down to 80, the compressor is going to bleed down and it's going to work its way down to 80 as well. So these two systems, the air pressure up here and the water pump pressure down here, are going to be a slave. The air compressor is always a slave to the water pump pressure. If I go back up to 100 psi, my air compressor is going to climb back up to 100 psi. So it's important that whatever pressure of water you're putting into your hose line, that the air compressor is the same. Now flow rates is where it's at. We've got to talk about flow rates with our compressed air foam system. I've got a hose hooked up onto my trash line discharge on the front bumper. I'm going to start to fill that hose line by opening this valve, and I want you to watch the flow meter display. You'll see the flow meter display start to tell you how many gallons per minute are flowing through that line. I'll close the valve back down here, and we'll see that that drop back down to 0. So there's a flow meter on all of the CAFS discharge lines: the trash line, the speed lay, the front cross lay, the rear cross lay, and the left rear discharge are all plumbed off of a foam manifold that has a paddle wheel that will display how many gallons per minute of water we're flowing. You'll also notice that there's a CAFS range sticker on each of these discharges. Typically when you're operating CAFS with this trash line, you're going to be somewhere between here and here. But rarely are you ever going to want to flow more than that. You're never going to need to flow much more water than when you're in the wet foam range. Alright, so now we'll go out and show you what compressed air foam looks like. All that we need to do is just flip the toggle switch once we're flowing water and foam. Once water and foam is flowing, we turn on our compressed air switch, and that turns it into compressed air foam. So we'll go open the nozzle and show you what that looks like. Okay, so once again, just a quick recap. Tank to pump is open. Tank refill is cracked just slightly. We pulled our primer for a few seconds, turned our compressor on. The foam system is automatically turned on. As you can see, the red light for on is on. I ran the pump pressure up to 100 psi, which makes the air compressor run at about 100 psi. We started flowing some water and foam solution into our trash line. We never open the valve wide open when you're making CAFS. You only need to open it up, fill the hose line with some water and foam solution, but before the line is completely full, you flip up your toggle switch cover and turn on the compressed air. And now we'll be making compressed air foam out of that discharge. So now we'll go out and open up the nozzle. So that was probably about 30 seconds worth of discharging foam. I'm just going to guess, but I'm guessing we were probably flowing between 50 and 60 gallons per minute of water during that quick little demonstration with the valve open just maybe a third of the way open. 50 to 60 gallons per minute of water. We maybe flowed, 30 seconds, and pretty significantly covered a pretty wide area with compressed air foam. Now the bubble density of compressed air foam is very thick. We're just using a smooth bore ball valve shutoff in this demonstration just to show you that The nozzle itself isn't doing any work. The nozzle is just an on-off valve to let the finished foam, the foam bubbles that are being made in the hose, because of the compressed air and the foam and the water that are traveling through the hose line together, the nozzle is just releasing all of these bubbles. And we've got a large smoothbore nozzle that's 1 3/8 orifice on the end, and that just allows the bubbles to come out uninterrupted out of the end of the nozzle and just flow out onto this grass. And this will last, I mean, this blanket of foam, it's not real thick, but again, this is only 30 seconds. So we've got a total of maybe 20, 25 gallons, maybe 30 gallons of water total that we've used to basically protect this entire area. And this grass is pretty dry, but I guarantee nothing that you see that's white right now will burn. If we want to make a drier, fluffier foam, all I have to do is go back in the cab and close down the valve a little bit. So we'll do that here now. Okay, again, all we need to do if we want to make a little bit fluffier foam is just close down this valve towards drier just a little bit. And then it'll show on this flow meter, once we open the nozzle, how many gallons per minute are flowing. Typically with compressed air foam, through an 1 3/4 or 1.5 hose line like what we have on our trash line, typically we're going to want between 30 gallons per minute showing up on this display. 30 gallons per minute will make a very dry, fluffy foam. You can even go down to 25 or so, and that'll make a very dry, fluffy foam because we're agitating it with about 60 cubic feet per minute of air. Go ahead and turn on our panel light switch here, get a little more light inside here, but this panel light, or this toggle switch will inject 60 cubic feet per minute of air. That's a lot of air, and if it's a low volume of water like we're set here for dry CAFS, it'll make a very dry, fluffy foam out on the end of the nozzle. If we want to make a wetter foam, we just bring this nozzle open a little bit more, up into the wetter foam range, and now we'll be up in the 60 to 70, maybe even 80 gallons per minute of water traveling through that hose line, along with 60 cubic feet per minute of air, and that'll make a very wet, high heat absorbing type foam. That's the type of foam you want to use if you're in a serious, high heat environment. If the fire's really kicking your butt, you're going to want a wetter foam. If you just got a small room and contents fire, or if you want to make an exposure protection foam, you're just going to want to back it down towards drier. You don't want to close it off completely because then all you're spraying is plain air. So make sure you've got your valve open, somewhere in the, like I say, between maybe 25 to 30, 35 gallons per minute to make the drier, fluffier foam, down between 25 and 35. When you want to make a higher heat absorbing, a fire knockdown foam, you want to be up over 50, 60 gallons per minute or more, so that you got plenty of water to absorb the BTUs. Okay? So we'll go out there and open the nozzle again and show you what this drier foam looks like. Put the camera out here a little closer to me this time, so you hear a little bit less of the truck and a little bit more of the nozzle. All right, here we go. Still got a pretty good water flow. This is still probably up over 40, maybe even 50 gallons per minute. You can see I've probably got about a 50 to 60 foot stream reach. There's not a lot of wind today. There's a little breeze at my back, but most of the wind is kind of swirling right now. This is probably about a, maybe 45 to 50 gallon a minute stream. So I'm going to run in the cab quick and close down the valve just a little bit more. I'm back. I closed down the valve maybe just another 1/4 inch. You release that initial pressure. There's a lot of kick when you first open a CAFS line. Once you get the CAFS line open, you can see it's quite easy to manage because it's pretty lightweight. So this is probably about a 30 gallon per minute foam, and you can see it's Pretty fluffy stuff. You know, just like a shaving cream type of foam. And again, all you need to do is switch the type of foam by just closing down the valve and making a drier foam down at around 25 to 30 gallons per minute. Or if you want a wetter foam, you just open the valve up to the wetter foam setting and get 60 to 70 gallons per minute of foam flowing. But again, remember, with compressed air foam, when you open a nozzle, when you reopen a closed nozzle, make sure you brace yourself for the additional kick, because the nozzle will have additional pressure from that compressed air that's stored in the line. And then after about 5 seconds, then it's very easy again to hang on to the hose line after that initial pressure is released.